know you're wondering, is Malabrigo yarn worth it? I've knit and crochet with two of Malabrigo's popular yarns, Rios and Dos Tierras. I've also been wearing them religiously for the past 6-ish months, so I think I'm the perfect guinea pig to tell you whether or not it's worth the splurge. I'm gonna share what I loved about the yarn, what really frustrated me, and also what I learned through this whole experience. In addition to my experience, we're going to talk about durability, accessibility, pricing, color, blocking, and pilling. So we've got a lot to cover today. I'm a little ashamed to admit this, but I went into this controversial yarn entirely blindly. I walked into my local yarn store and fell in love with the gorgeous colors and the price tag. At that point, I had been used to Madeline Tosh prices at $32 per skein for 100 grams. I could get 100 grams of superwash merino for $18 a skein with these beautiful colors. What a steal. It wasn't until I brought the yarn home, started working on this sweater specifically, and took my whip to knitting group that I saw the faces and comments of the ladies there. Not in a mean way, they're not snarky. It's just that they had had tough experiences working with Malabrigo. And that made me really scared. It was horror story after horror story about pilling, about it blocking out 2 sizes too big. And at that point, I had already wound up the yarn, so I couldn't return it. It was kind of those the only way out is through type of problems. But I'm really glad that I did because I'm pretty happy with how my sweater turned out. In my case, I took the advice that those knitters gave me religiously. And I think that's what saved the sweater. So let me be that knitting friend to you and help you save time and money so that you don't accidentally waste your Malabrigo. But first, let's give credit where credit is due. It's imported from Uruguay and Peru. It is hand dyed, and that's how you get the gorgeous colors that you see. They're very, very big on ethically sourced fibers, and it's not itchy. I have sensitive skin. I would have seen it on my forearms, on my neck, on my shoulders, and it's not. I can wear the sweater all day. All that for a reasonable price for 100% animal fiber. It is definitely, for all of those aspects, it is a luxury yarn. And it should be to us because we're giving these fibers a whole new life. All right, let's get into the bad because every up has a down. The Rios is a 100% superwash merino, which grows a ton with blocking. I wish I was kidding. One of my friends in knitting group told me that her sweater grew 2 sizes in Malabrigo Rios. And that was almost me if I hadn't followed her advice on how to save it. It's also hand dyed, which means that it's dyed in lots, which means that variations between lots can be huge. The variation between skeins, even in the same lot that I bought from the same store, was pretty big. I'm gonna try to put a photo of it up here from when I bought the skeins. So what you have to do is you have to alternate the skeins. So 2 rows of one, then 2 rows of the other one, and vice versa. I didn't want to do that for the entirety of the sweater. And so when I got about to the quarter of a ball left, half to a quarter, is where I would integrate the next skein so that it would kind of be like a gradient and you wouldn't tell that much. I also tried to let the variation happen a lot in the sleeves because how often do you put the 2 sleeves next to each other, right? So you have, I don't know if you can actually see this on camera, this part right here is lighter, and here I was alternating, versus a much deeper, richer blue here on this side. You just need to look at all of the skeins as soon as you buy them. Buy more than the pattern calls for, at least 20% more, because the odds of you getting your hands on a skein that's going to match the ones that you just bought, especially if you're buying online, very, very low. So just keep that in mind. Buy more than the pattern calls for, alternate your rows so that the color gets integrated more seamlessly. And remember that part of the beauty of hand-dyed yarn is precisely that. It is imprecise. It varies a little bit, and that's what gives it the depth and the life that is so interesting from far away. Something I learned during my gauge swatch, but didn't really bother to fix, was that the Rios is a very thin worsted weight yarn. I'll insert a clip here of holding up this Tosh DK next to the Malabrigo Rios, and the Tosh DK actually looks thicker than the Malabrigo Rios, which was pretty mind-boggling to me. So that just illustrates how different companies will label different yarns, different sizes, just according to what they believe that size should be. Ways that you can solve this are you can hold the Malabrigo Rios with a mohair or a Surrey alpaca to give it a little bit more thickness and a little bit more warmth. I believe that this thinner yarn is actually what makes this sweater so lightweight and something that I can actually wear in the fall and spring without overheating, versus my actual Madeline Tosh DK or worsted projects that they're actually also crochet, so they're thicker for that reason. But there's a certain point that you just can't wear them outside. You just can't wear them beyond a crisp day because they're so warm. I've talked an awful lot about the Rios, but what about the Dos Tierras? The Dos Tierras is listed as a DK weight. It is pretty thin in my opinion for a DK weight, and it's 50% merino, 50% baby alpaca. It's incredibly soft, and honestly, it's something that I want to wear on my neck. Not something I tolerate on my neck, something I want on my neck. It's got a beautiful, lovely drape, and it's incredibly warm. This is in the color Polar, and I cannot wait to buy another skein to make a little scarf like this for myself, because I made this for my mom. I know, I'm jealous. We've talked a lot about the Rios. What about the Dos Tierras, which is 50% baby alpaca and 50% merino? I used it to crochet this balaclava. You can actually tell that this gray right here is a leftover of this Polar. Again, this was crochet, and I held it with Knit Picks Aloft, which is a mohair. I honestly love it, and I'll dive into it in a little bit. This is a Sophie scarf that I made for my mom. I'm jealous because it's absolutely gorgeous and it pairs very, very well with my red sweater, and I want one for myself. So I will someday be going to get some Dos Tierras in Polar for myself. It's incredibly warm, and I actually want to wear it on my neck. I don't tolerate it. I want to wear it. And I think this is one of the first times that has actually happened to me. There's so many sweaters and so much yarn that I tolerate on my neck, or that I don't think about being on my neck, like the Rios. The Dos Tierras, I actually want to wear. Because of its drape and how delicate it is, I'm not sure I actually want to make a whole garment out of it. I think I would have to think long and hard about what that garment would be. This balaclava, and I'm not trying to plug my own pattern, it's literally a free tutorial here. This was a lifesaver. This winter we had so many blizzards, so many record-breaking snowfalls, and it was literally taller than my dog. My dog is like yay high. My dog is taller than me sitting down, and the snow was taller than her. And when the snow removal company would come to get rid of our snow and push it onto the yard, that pile was taller than me standing up. And in below freezing temperatures in both Fahrenheit and Celsius, having something nice, thick, and warm was a total game changer for me going outside. So it's an extremely warm, extremely soft, especially when paired with that mohair from Knit Picks. I cannot speak more highly of this yarn and this combination for this purpose. There is nothing else I want this to be made out of. Nothing. And I think that the base color of the blue really shows the contrast of the color and how hand dyed it is. Of course, the mohair is in carbon, so it's going to be pulling it a little bit darker, but absolutely gorgeous. Sorry, back to the tangent. I completely forgot that we were focusing on the bad stuff. The thickness just isn't where you would expect it to be. The Dos Tierras does not feel like a DK. It felt more like a sport. The Rios felt more like a DK, less like a worsted. So I would definitely pair it with something. Okay, I don't know if this is just me. I could just be terrible at winding yarn, but the Dos Tierras was fine. The Rios kept on tangling the entire time. I don't know if it's because I didn't have my ball winder in Swift at the time, so I was putting it around a chair and winding it up, but I've done it that way up until I got the Swift for every single skein, whether it be Malabrigo, Madeline Tosh, Amano, Universal Yarn. All of those came in skeins that I wound up around a chair or around my knees, and Malabrigo just had the most tangles and problems that I've ever had. It took me at least double the time to wind it up. Again, could just be me. I could have just gotten a bad batch, but that was frustrating as someone who didn't have a winder in Swift at that time. All that to say, all of that good, the bad, the ugly, the fantastic, all of that to say, if you want to work with Malabrigo, proceed with caution. But you can proceed. And in many cases, you should. Again, I'm in love with the accessories that I made out of Dos Tierras. I'm a little sad that it's getting warmer, so I can't wear my balaclava. That's how much I love it. So how do you proceed? Here is my guide to working with Malabrigo Rios specifically. These are not all original ideas. Lots have come from my knitting group and then also my experience as well. Your first step, when you buy the yarn, inspect it thoroughly and make sure that the colors are somewhat similar. And buy more yarn than you think you need to. I'm serious. You're not going to be able to call the yarn store and be like, oh, I need a light blue that's closer to white, but like not super white. They're not going to know what color your other skeins are, honey. I'm speaking from experience. I've tried that. Not with Malabrigo, but I've tried that. Second, block your gauge swatch. Knit it up, count your gauge before blocking, count your gauge after blocking, and then do the math of the percentage of growth. If you want to be real fancy with it, take that percentage of growth against the sizing of your pattern and see if that's the size that you're going to want to end up with. It's probably not the size you want to end up with, and so you're going to either want to size down for the growth, or you just go on vibes and you make something cropped and hope that it grows enough. That's kind of what I did. Your next step, number 3, when you're done with your garment, is you are going to block it in cool water. I've heard, I didn't try this because I don't want to find out, but I've heard that warm water is going to, 1, help make the colors bleed, and 2, help the fibers grow. So you want cool water, especially if you're doing something with color work like this. Your 4th step, don't let the garment stretch when it's wet. I don't think you heard me. Don't let the garment stretch when it's wet. What do I mean? When you're blocking, let's pretend this is what you're blocking, and you put it in the bowl or the bucket or wherever you block it, and it's wet, you're not going to pull it out like this. This is going to put the force of gravity on your wet, heavy garment and stretch it. So you are going to pick it up from the bottom, making sure that nothing is falling over and subject to gravity. All the weight is in your hands. You're going to scoop it up and you're going to put it where you're blocking. I was very gentle with the towel to get the excess water out, and it actually was blocked more wet than it usually is because I didn't want to wring it out. The least amount of gravity that you allow a certain part, like a sleeve, to pull on your garment, the less it's going to grow throughout the process. And the Rios especially is very, very susceptible to that. Another thing that I did was actually scrunch up my sweater. You heard me. as I was blocking, I shoved the fibers close to each other and then tapped it down so that it laid flat. And I don't know how the physics works behind that, but it does. You scrunch, 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 so there's a bunch of wrinkles, and then you tap them, and somehow it becomes flat, but doesn't grow in length. And so I scrunched every part of the sweater inward, so it looked like it would be too small to fit, and it ended up blocking the right size. If all else fails, you can throw it in the dryer for a very brief amount of time. I have not personally tried that, but some ladies in my knitting group have, and it's worked for them. So there's that. At the end of the day, Malabrigo is a secret weapon to those who know how to use it. It's an affordable, hand-dyed, 100% animal fiber or natural fiber yarn that is very, very friendly to sensitive skin. So as long as you follow these tips and tricks and you're careful with your yarn, you should have a beautiful garment or accessory that'll last you for a very long time. So for the scoreboard, it's very durable. It does pill. It started pilling a little bit when I was working with it, and it pilled a little bit with use, but it's still pretty good, I would say. Blocking, I would give it a poor rating just because of how finicky it is. Price, it is very affordable for what it actually is. Someone commented on one of my videos that 18 per skein couldn't be affordable, but given the range of prices for hand-dyed 100% animal fibers, I think Malabrigo is on the good end. And accessibility, it is easily accessible at many of my local yarn shops in the Boston suburbs and Boston proper, and you can also buy it online at many different retailers. So, as long as you're buying it all in one bulk, if you're doing it online, or you're buying it all at once in person, you should be okay. And don't forget that you can always pair it with a mohair to give it a little bit more structure and avoid all that pilling. If you like reviews like this, check out this video on my 6-month review of the ChiaoGoo interchangeable needles and this video on my review of the Sabai top. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.